are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Harriett Brooks is with us. She is a landscape architect, very involved with the redevelopment of, is it really redevelopment? I guess it is redevelopment. I mean, it's been developed to some degree, but it's a completely different animal is what this is, of the East Bank. And we're taking phone calls talking about the vision, which has been approved and it's moving forward, and it's pretty darn exciting. The biggest project in Nashville history, redevelopment-wise. Let's take a call from, I think, Heather. Heather, good morning. Hi, Heather.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I was just wondering, you know, we had a flood, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so ago in that area. Are we considering that in this planning?
What a great question. Gosh, yeah. I mean, I remember, and boy, we talked about just the, look, and I'm sure you've thought of that. Remember, that's an awesome point. How high the Cumberland got, crested, flooded a lot of areas. Obviously, you know what happened over at the Grand Ole Opry, Opryland Hotel, rather. And what about that? Floodplain, are we building, like you said, a lot of that area over there is floodplain. How are we going to address that?
Right, so that...
Let's build levees.
Let's not.
Okay.
Let's not build levees.
All right.
So that was one of the real catalysts for the plan, is the river. As you mentioned, the May 2010 flood was just devastating for our city.
Oh, we flooded right here at News Channel 5.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's that far away from the river, but I mean, it flooded here.
Right. So that was about a what we call in landscape architecture speak a 500-year flood.
Yeah, we hear those now, but we all know. They were just talking about how this being a 500-year storm that hit Florida, a devastating storm. I got news for you. It's going to be an every other year type event now. The world has changed. Well,
and you're hitting on a kind of a key point here, is even since 2010, we are seeing an increased frequency of these really intense rain events. The river is flooding more often, but not just that, not just kind of the 2010 flood scenario where we just, you know, had a dump of rain for 2 days. It rained like 13 inches in 36 hours or something. But we're seeing also a lot of like localized flash flooding. So we might just get dumped on for an hour or two, but in a part of the river, because of our stormwater infrastructure and the amount that we're building, a hardscape, all that water is rushing to the river. It's flooding, creating localized flash floods. So it's really critical when we're talking about this low side of the river on the East Bank to deal with the flooding issue. And there's an opportunity here to really create a more resilient relationship to the river as we think about climate change and these storms increasing over time. You know, how are we protecting ourselves in terms of flooding, but how are we being responsible stewards of the river? And what's really awesome about this plan is that it provides an opportunity to increase our flood resiliency, but also use that to create more parks and green spaces along the river so that we're not building a levee that would separate us from the river, but we're building a more gentle sloping riverbank that people can utilize when it's not flooding.
So does that mean, are you talking about landfill going out into it? Or are you? I mean, what will we do? And by the way, will there be? You'll have to put in stormwater infrastructure that's not there now, which means you can take it into account. But what's going to stop those areas from flooding?
Sure. So the plan lays out a two-pronged framework. One is actually adjusting the riverbank itself, and so
like
that we call it laying it back, but it is regrading it. So right now our riverbank's really steep. So laying back the river is regrading it so it's a more gentle slope down to the river, but it allows places for the river to breathe and to, when it floods, for that water to kind of expand, gently go up in a very in intentional places where we're okay with it flooding. And then you use that the soil that you use to kind of dig out to build up places where you're going to have development. And so it's about balancing the cut and fill, where you cut away at the riverbank in a gentle way so that it can breathe and flood, and then you use that filled soil and build on top of it so that it creates places out of the floodplain that are safe to be buildable properties. And so that's a really critical part of the plan. We worked with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and some resiliency engineers out of Atlanta who do this sort of work all over the world.
Who is it that, there, I'm trying to imagine, because I was asking them about their design studio over there at Metro Planning.
Oh, right. It wasn't me.
I know, it's not you guys, but I'm like, who is it that knows how much has to be done, taking into account some of these devastating floods? And you hit it on the head. I was thinking maybe the Army Corps is looking, look, we know what it's going to take if you have another flood like 2010 on what you're going to have to do over here to protect these areas that we're showing you now. I mean, that could be underwater if there's nothing in place.
Exactly.
And so they're telling you how much soil needs to be moved, what kind of berms need to be built, and all of that.
Exactly. So that is the kind of riparian or flood resiliency portion of it. Okay. The other part, as you mentioned, is the stormwater management. And so the way stormwater management traditionally works in Metro is if I had a property that I was developing, a single parcel or whatever, I built on top of it, I would be responsible for dealing with my stormwater that falls on my property. But again, because we have this 113 acres of Metro-owned land, there's an opportunity here to build a district-wide stormwater infrastructure on the East Bank where all of the development feeds into the same system, and so all the stormwater that falls on the East Bank can be slowed down, stored in the case of a really serious rain event so it doesn't rush right back into the river, pollutants removed, and then slowly go back into the river clean. So we're removing pollutants. This is also...
That sounds like a water treatment plant almost. Are you saying these would be giant sewer pipes and it goes through the stormwater into the sewers and then down there and there's filters or something?
No, so there's a couple of different ways that it works. So we're combining nature-based solutions, so riparian areas where the water is actually kind of naturally treated via plants, or kind of like wetlands, and then it floods back in. But then also in the case of really serious storms, it would be stormwater detention facilities underneath the park that would kind of store it and then allow it to slowly go back. So it wouldn't be connected to the sewer system at all. It would be kind of its own system.
A dedicated stormwater system. But again, it would be where the water runs off the roads into a stormwater drainage system, correct? Separate from sewer, all right?
Right.
And then it makes its way through the process. As you said, it may go all into one area where then it can be managed and then dispersed back into the river in a clean way.
Correct.
I just don't know how you're going to do all this. It's really a big project.
Well, it's being done in other places.
Okay,
What's great about this opportunity is it does enable Nashville to be a real leader in the Southeast in terms of these kind of innovative river riparian infrastructure and this piloting some of this district stormwater management stuff. I mean, it's new to us. It's fairly distinctive within the Southeast, but it's something, they're doing it in the Netherlands, they're doing it other places in the world. It's just, we have an opportunity here to kind of catch up.
Oh, exactly, because there have been an awful lot of cities in this country that have developed around the river, more so than us, and this city's perfect for it, really. I mean, Cumberland goes right through here, and we've seen it, so there's other cities to look at. Let's take a call from James. James, good morning. Hi, James.
Guys, I think this is cool. Excellent job, young lady. I can't believe how talented you are. But my question is, while we're in this, might as well put a boat cruise to where up in Michigan it's called Boblo. I think that's an excellent idea for this. Many people could hop on a paddle wheel and ride around from here to Franklin or whichever direction you decide to go.
Listen, it's funny as you said boat, because I literally wrote down boat dock. Now, you know that we have the General Jackson that makes its way over from Opryland, and so that paddle boat's already out there. But I was just wondering, now you can touch on his question if that's part of the equation, but I was also wondering, as that's developed and pushed back, is there going to be an area there maybe where, there's a couple over there now where there's a boat slip, you see them there once, but a marina of some type off. I don't even know if that's in the works, and there may not be enough room considering the width of the Cumberland there.
So that has definitely been a part of the conversation. We've received a lot of interest from some folks who have boats on Old Hickory Lake who want an opportunity to be able to come downtown, go to a Preds game, or go to a Titans game.
Or go to a Titans game and have a place kind of like the Vol Navy that goes to the UT games. But I don't know.
Exactly. That was one thing that was mentioned.
But is there the room for that, you think?
So in the plan, as part of this kind of layback strategy of the river, one of the things that you could do is make that layback a marina or a dock, or at least, you know.
Which area again? Like that you
on the parts of the river where you're regrading it.
Okay, so you would actually literally be grading out so more water goes back. You're dredging out or pulling out land and creating a cove, if you will.
Right. So we don't. We don't say exactly what that could be. It could, but one option could be some sort of boating facility, a marina or a dock or that kind of thing. We also had a lot of conversations with people who own kayaking companies that give tours on the Cumberland, and a couple of other boating entities.
Stand-up paddle.
Maybe.
How about something like that? Yeah.
So there's a lot of interest there. One of the things we really have to balance is that this is a working river, and so there is barge traffic every day, multiple times a day. The Army Corps' biggest interest is maintaining that kind of navigable channel along the river to enable that barge traffic, but it's nothing that can't be worked out. You know, it requires collaboration. It requires, figuring out. We just currently don't have the infrastructure. As a city, we don't have someone who's sitting there monitoring how many times a day the barges come by and making sure that they're not, hitting a kayaker or whatever. So so there's a lot of kind of coordination and feasibility that would have to be done. We do lay out in the plan 3 or 4 different places that might be suitable for having some sort of marina or boating infrastructure that might include fueling stations for boats,
like quick stops,
slips, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So we lay that out in the plan, and in our implementation phase, we just need to do more work on, what is the feasibility, how much would it cost, who would want to pay for it, all of that.
So when we talk about the redevelop, and we can touch on this when we come back our final segment, it's like a lot of stuff is still to be announced. We don't know yet for sure. Like that's an option that's discussed, and what other private entities may want to come and be a part of this, and it's case by case. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. We'll wrap things up, covering some other ground, maybe some other things you want to make sure you touch on that folks need to know about right after this with our guest. Stay with us.